Redditors who have been clinically dead and then revived/resuscitated, what did dying feel like? How it changed your life? Did you see anything while passed on? I wasn't clinically dead, but I was on my way due to an incredibly fast onset of anaphylaxis. Like, less than 2 seconds between being fully awake and sitting up to being slumped over and unable to so much as open my eyes. I was as limp and unresponsive as a rag doll, but I was 100% conscious. The nurses were running around, moving me around, etc. I knew they'd bring me back with epinephrine, so I wasn't freaking out, but it was very strange. The way I put it is that the elevator doors shut, but didn't start going down. So I was in that elevator for about 5 minutes. 4 things I learned. When those doors shut, nothing else is in there. You're in there by yourself. For better or for worse. Nothing you do in life, nobody you know, nothing you owe or any owes you, comes in there. And you can't change anything anymore. What you did in your life is now beyond your control to change. It can happen extremely fast. My wife was standing next to me when it happened, and it was all so fast that I wouldn't have been able to so much as say I love you to her one last time. So assume that you won't get a chance to say anything, or anything worthwhile. At least, my last words would have been, I think I'm going to be sick. Do all of that now, while the sun is shining. Tell people that you love them. Figure out what you need to figure out before you die. Don't wait, you won't have the chance when the moment comes. I want to be calm when that time comes for me again. It would be a very, very hard thing to have regrets in those last few moments. To end life in sadness. I could hear every single word people were saying, including my wife. If she had been screaming, panicking, etc., I would have gotten extremely scared, and they'd have no idea, because I couldn't even make a sound. And I can't imagine a sadder thing than a person being scared on their way out. So, from that experience, I learned that if you are with a person who may be dying and seems to be unconscious, please do your best to remain calm and speak to them in a calm and reassuring voice. Even if they are dying and you know it. They're in there alone, and they might hear you, even if it looks for all the world like they can't. Edit, and when I came out, I did see things differently. The best description of how I see life now is what Shakespeare wrote. As if you were dismayed, be cheerful, sir. Our revels now are ended. These are actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air, and, like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yeah, all which it inherit, shall dissolve and, like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. I fell 3 stories back on the 80s. Broke my sternum, most of ribs on my right side, my right arm, femur where the hip joint is, and fractured my pelvis in many places. I was alert while the fire department cut the fence down so the ambulance could get me out of the courtyard I was in. Also most of the ambulance ride. I knew I was in deep shit when the paramedic told the driver that I was code_____unknown and to redirect to another hospital. I remember the paramedic trying to keep her balance while she was pulling stuff out of the upper cabinets because the ambulance was swaying real hard now. Everything became really peaceful. I was now observing everything from a different angle. As if I was above and to the right of myself. I came to while a surgeon was sewing my left eyelid back on. As it was partially torn off when I hit something on the way down. He asked me how I felt, and seemed very curious if I saw anything. I died in the ambulance that day. Shock is hell of a thing. It changed my life in so many ways. I became much more happy. I don't sweat the small stuff as much. It also somehow made me more confident. So let me preface this by saying I'm immunocompromised, and that's why things went bad fast. Few years ago I got an abscess in my lower back, and about 4 hours after I started showing symptoms, fever, side inflammation, pain, etc. I started going septic while waiting in the ER. Just started really feeling like shit. After being admitted and already started on some hardcore broad-spectrum antibiotics, I just wasn't getting better. In fact, I was getting worse, and I felt awful and it hurt so badly, but nothing showing up on CAT, MRI, or X-ray to suggest an abscess. So they thought it was a skin infection. About 3 days in, packed with ice bags, my temp was 104.7 and my organs were starting to shut down. It was weird because I went from feeling the most miserable I've ever felt, to peace, calm, pain-free, and quiet. I couldn't hear anything. Like I had just been put in a soundproof room. I could still see my wife, my mom, and siblings, and they started panicking. I didn't know at the time, but my heart was going into a weird rhythm or something along those lines. I just closed my eyes like I was just gonna take a nap. Remember just feeling like I've had a good life and only being sad I was leaving my wife behind, only been married 3 years at this point. Remember seeing almost like a foggy haze, like you see in movies where they're by the docks early morning, and being told not yet by a figure in said fog. Woke up a couple hours later and apparently they got me back and also gave me emergency surgery as the surgeon had a hunch where the abscess was, even though charts didn't show anything. Spent an entire month in the hospital recovering. Bandage changes were a bitch because it was so deep. Thanks to that surgeon and rest of the staff, I'm still here today. When I was really young, I went to a church party at a pastor's house, went off the diving board to look cool in front of big kids. Well, I couldn't swim, immediately sank. I kept breathing in water every time I surfaced. Then I remember feeling really tired and really calm. I looked towards the surface and saw it get further and further away. Everything grew dark, weird to say, but it was blissful. I felt nothing, then remember hacking my lungs out and nothing in between. Kids saw me and rushed over. I don't remember being pulled out or the mouth-to-mouth. All I remember is coughing violently. Remember feeling really tired and really calm. I looked towards the surface and saw it get further and further away. Everything grew dark, weird to say, but it was blissful. This bit is comforting. I lost my son to drowning last summer. He was 18. He'd just graduated high school, summa cum laude, and was going into the Navy. He took a cross-country trip with his best friend as a last hurrah. They were camping in Boise National Forest when my son tried to swim the river. He went under close to the other side. Multiple people tried to save him, but could not. I hope his last moments were as you describe. Blissful. When I was 7, I choked on a hot dog at a backyard barbecue. Because I was quietly sitting by myself in a corner, reading, nobody noticed me until I was already on the ground and blue. My uncle pretty much shoved his whole hand down my throat to get the food out, then did mouth-to-mouth and CPR for 2 minutes until I was conscious. I slipped in and out of consciousness for the whole ambulance ride to the hospital, and I remember feeling like the oxygen mask was choking me, and fighting the EMTs who strapped me to the board. I spent the night in the hospital, with a concussion. My grandmother fainted and hit her head when she thought I was gone, and they let us stay in a room together. She taught me how to play gin that night. Anyway, my strongest memory is feeling the world slip away from me. I was frozen. I knew that I was going to die and I was too scared to move. My whole family was on the other side of the yard, and it felt like I was being pulled away from them into nothingness. I don't remember any bright lights or anything like that. What I remember most is a sudden burst of noise. It was total silence and then sudden screaming and crying. I think that was the scariest thing of all, to wake up to the sound of both my parents and even my super stoic grandfather just wailing. I was very religious as a kid, and I think it pushed me over into a zealotry that lasted pretty much until puberty, when I decided that I liked boys more than Jesus. I was afraid that if I so much as told a fib, I would die and not get to spend eternity in paradise with my family. We were Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was all up in everyone else's business, 2. Because I wanted to be sure we were all free of sin so we could be together if one of us suddenly dropped dead or if Armageddon came. I'm atheist now, so obviously it didn't stick, but I was an insufferable Bible basher for my entire childhood, basically, as a direct result of a stupid piece of hot dog. Not really about me, but my father is a paramedic, and one dude called the ambulance cause he was feeling lightheaded. As they were driving to the hospital, the paramedics checked his pulse, and watched as it faded to 0. The dude was conscious for a solid minute with no pulse until his heart started pumping again, and he was perfectly fine as far as my father ever heard of him. He said it was the creepiest thing talking to a currently dead person. I woke up during surgery once and drowned in my own blood. I was clinically dead for about 3 minutes. I didn't see/hear anything. When I woke up I was totally unaware that anything had happened. To me everything had gone as planned and I had just woke up as planned. If it wasn't for the extra nurses/doctors around me I'd have never known anything had gone wrong. This is why I don't believe in heaven or hell. When we die, we simply cease to be. That's scary to think about. It was nothing. I overdosed. All I remember is right before and then waking up in the ambulance. It was just like sleeping. Same. I've overdosed and it's exactly like falling asleep. You don't remember the exact moment you fall into sleep, you sort of just drift into the darkness. Kinda the best way to go in my opinion, until they hit you with the Narcan and you freeze to death. I had a family member who has died, after battling cancer. They had an dying experience, and according to them, they were greeted by someone, at that event who told them, "Now is not your time, return to us then, or it may have been we'll return to get you then." Supposedly they gave them a time, not specific, but more of a seasonal time frame. They died about 10 months later. In my view, it didn't really change them. They knew the time was approaching, so it was more a matter of the time. They fought a courageous fight, never heard a complaint at least to me. The question I always have is, was that just their mind telling them to fight on, or was it a real near-death experience? I just want to have the same strength, when I face my death. I was out for about 45 minutes, according to friends, but felt like it was just seconds. I was submerged in water, I could see and talk while in the water, like the ocean, and I saw shadows of people on the other side, similar when there is a wave in the ocean then you submerge, seemed like that was the only thing that separated me from them. Like a curtain of water inside the ocean. I couldn't really see them but they seemed like friends, and I was told to go back, then I woke up. It made me appreciate life more, I was very reckless. Told to go back that have me goosebumps. And 45 minutes. Just wow. I was in a critical condition from hypertension back in October due to an exceedingly rare undiagnosed kidney disease. I'd had headaches for months but wrote them off as needing new glasses or stress from work. The day I was admitted to hospital my BP was 200/140. For comparison, a healthy BP is 135/75 at its uppermost limit. The doctors told me afterwards I was about 30 minutes away from a stroke or heart attack. After I had an arterial line placed I needed to pee so I stood up to use a cup. I felt myself go woozy and I actually said to my mum I'm going. My BP bottomed out and I collapsed in the resuscitation room. All I could see was red. I was surrounded by warm red light and I could hear very clearly carousel music playing in the background. I remember having the concrete thought of I am dead. This is what it's like to die. I woke up thankfully and after a diagnosis and treatment from the best renal clinic in the world I'm back and better than ever. Really fucking scary though, wouldn't recommend it. Carousel music, what the fuck, it's insane how unique everyone's experiences are, and equally terrifying.